We're going to read from verse 18, or rather from verse 12, from verse 12 to 26. So that's the end of the chapter. We have been following the teacher or the preacher of Ecclesiastes as he's made an examination of life. We're coming to the last of, if you might want to call them, the negative things that he sees vanity in. He sees no purpose or point in living life under the sun. But from verse 23 to 26, there's a very positive message. And then also in chapter 3, from verse 1 to 14, very positive message. So he's going to expose again the vanity of life, but there is joy coming. Before we read these words, let's ask the Lord for a blessing upon them. Shall we pray? Gracious God and Father, we thank and praise you for the privilege of being able to open our words in public and in freedom without fear. Our world may disagree with these things. They may think we're fools for paying attention to them, but we are able to do these things without fear. And help us to take advantage of these times. Help us to be able to internalize and understand these blessed truths, that they may sustain us and they may strengthen us as we serve you in this life. For we ask it, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. So beginning at verse 12, Ecclesiastes 2, page 657, hear the word of God. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is vanity. For of the wise as of the fool there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies, just like the fool. So I hated life, because what is done under the sun was grievous to me. For all is vanity and a striving after wind. Now the words of our text. I hated all my toil, in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This is also vanity. So I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What is a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This also is vanity. That's the end of our text, but let's finish the chapter. There's nothing better for a person than that he should eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? For the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, only to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after wind. Thus for the reading of God's holy word, may he bless that word to us now. Brothers and sisters in Jesus Christ our Lord, I think that we have before us here in Ecclesiastes a fitting word for a congregation such as our own, for a community such as our own. We are a community blessed in many respects with diligence and hard work, with what might be described as that Calvinist work ethic, and that is good. We find that there is much that we can do, and we strive diligently to do it. We spend our days in difficult labors. We start businesses. We succeed by the blessing of the Lord, and we find ourselves as we move through life experiencing God's goodness towards us materially, financially. And that is to be rejoiced over. That's what we're going to say tomorrow when we gather together in God's house. We're going to thank Him for His abundance and His faithfulness and His goodness towards us. But sometimes because of that blessing, sometimes because that is the ethos of our community, we can miss something of the challenge that it presents us. A challenge that I think can be illustrated or demonstrated in the simple question of, why are you going to get up for work tomorrow? Tomorrow's a day off, of course, so Tuesday. Why are you going to get up for work Tuesday or any day? Why do you go to school? Why do you get up to go to school? Maybe some of us wish we could sleep in and not get on the bus to go to school. But why do we go to school? Why do we do these things? Why do we do laundry? Why do we prepare meals and keep the house clean? Why do we do any of these things? Why do we get up in the morning to work? We all do, and we all do with great diligence and great energy and activity. But why? We know what we are to do. We know what that will produce. We know what that will provide for us. We know a lot of the answer to the question of what, but do we ever think of the question why? Why? We don't usually ask that question or reflect on it in our youth, as we're beginning out, as life holds potential, as the promise of life lies before us, and as we begin climbing that hill of success. We don't ask why am I doing this, but maybe as we get a little older, as we maybe even begin to see the finish line sort of creeping up, maybe not here yet, but the marathon is half over, and we begin to realize the end is coming soon, and then maybe we ask why? Why am I doing this? Why am I staying up so late to work? Why am I missing out on so many different activities? Why am I devoting myself to such labor, to such toil? In our text, our teacher, our preacher, in reflecting on that simple question, comes to a very startling conclusion. As our text begins, he says, I hated all my toil, in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool. I hated it. And later on, he speaks about giving his heart up to despair. He looks at his life, and he's despairing, angry, hating all that has happened and all that he has done. We might want to ask ourselves, given also the wisdom of this man, why would you say that? Like, how is it possible that you could come to such a dark, dismal place in terms of your labors, in terms of your toil, in terms of your work? And his answer is quite simple. He says, the reason I hate it, the reason I despair, it's very simple. I have to give it to somebody else. Irrespective of whether that person's wise or a fool, that's not even the issue at this point. He could be wise, he could be a fool. That's not the point. The point is I have to give it to him. And that makes me hate my work. That makes my work pointless. That makes all that I do, getting up early every morning when the sun is still down, a vanity, a futility. I think we'd probably want to say to this teacher, this preacher, wait a second, that doesn't sound right. After all, work is good. Very good. From the very first, God has made us to work. He gave to humanity, as we read in Genesis 1, the responsibility, the obligation of exercising dominion, to develop and advance this glorious world that He created, to take its vast potential and all of its promise and build it up into a glorious place of praise to God. And isn't that what we all do on some level? Some of us do it almost quite literally. When we build things, we take that which was once a tree, that which was once in the ground before it was mined out of it, and we build it into a beautiful home, into a beautiful building, into a beautiful barn. We take God's glorious creation and make it refined Even as God himself had done, he took that undifferentiated mass over which the Spirit hovered and from it created all of life. So that when we work, whether it's at home, whether it's on the job site, in an office, in a school, whether it's working intellectually, physically, emotionally, when we work, we follow in the footsteps of our Heavenly Father and pattern our lives after him. We participate in his plan and purpose of life. That's what gives work value and meaning, significance and joy, blessedness. And indeed, surely that's still the case. For all of us, a job well done is its own reward. There was a study not that long ago on the most satisfying, somebody wanted to know the most satisfying job. And they came after all of their study, and you can read the study and how they determined this. They came to the conclusion that the most satisfying job was being a truck driver. You might think, well, how can that be the most satisfying job? But because it has a joy in it that is contained. You begin a work, and then you finish it, and you go to bed, and there's nothing left to do until tomorrow when you do it again, and then you finish it. You're constantly completing your task. You're constantly satisfied with the way your work went. You're enjoying the success, the conclusion to your labor. And I think we all experience that on some level. There's a joy in figuring things out as we sit in class and as we're learning something new and suddenly that light bulb goes off. There's a joy in that. There's a joy in developing something, in being able to use our hands and our minds in concert and to figure out a solution to a problem, to build something that can be used to be a blessing to others. Indeed, isn't there such a pleasure in being able to drive by a field that is yours, by a home that you built, by something that you've done, and to be able to say, that's what I did, to take the family for a moment and say, there's the evidence of my hard labor. Work has a value, surely. For if nothing else, we contribute to the blessing of others by our labor. And isn't there a joy in that? When the fruit of our labor produces food, clothing, housing, and enjoyment for our friends and family, don't we rejoice in that when we can pour out our blessing into the lives of others? So how can this teacher, how can this preacher, how can he say that he hated his life, that he despaired in his life because of the pointlessness of his work? Well, again, the specific concern of this teacher is about the transfer of all that he's done to another. The teacher has already dealt with the value of pleasure and of enjoying work, of enjoying the fruit of our hands in the opening section of chapter 2, and he found that to be vanity. But here the teacher has in mind the enduring worth or the longevity, the ongoing value of what it is that we accomplish. Think of it this way. What is the abiding value of a sandcastle on the beach as the tide creeps closer and closer? We might say if it's a child out for a Saturday afternoon on the beach, having a bit of fun, building a bit of a sandcastle with dad or mom, that's a good memory. It's a good experience. The fact that it's going to be erased in a few hours, that's no big deal. But what if that was your life? What if you spend days, months, and even decades carefully crafting and painstakingly building the most beautiful of sandcastles in which a family could literally live if they wanted, only to have it wiped out and erased from its place? Maybe those are two disconnected questions from our daily experience. Maybe that doesn't really resonate with us. When you get home today, maybe Google reporter knocks down Jenga tower. There was at one point a young man who built a Jenga tower with 12,000 blocks and built this beautiful replica of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And he was about to be evaluated by the Guinness Book of World Records. But before the examiner could do his work, he was interviewed by a reporter who carelessly walked around the tower with his wired microphone. And you can imagine what happened. All 12,000 blocks came down. You can hear in the young man's voice the frustration and anger and bitterness at seeing his entire work carelessly destroyed. I think you could probably empathize with such a one. Well, says the teacher of Ecclesiastes, that's your life. That's what comes of your work. Everything you accomplish in this life amounts to a pile of dust, an unrecognizable ash heap of nothingness. And why? Because you have to give it away. You must surrender all you do. It's not so much to whom you give it that's in view, not yet, that's later. It's not who you give your accomplishments to that matters at this point. It's just that you have to give them away. You must leave all that you do, all your success, all your ability, all your accomplishments, all your trophies, you might say, are going to be on someone else's shelf. There is in this a sense of mortality expressed, though it's not merely dying that's in view here. It's rather what the departure of our lives means for all that we've done. Basically, since we must leave all our work to another, the teacher's saying, what are you really accomplishing in the end? Do you not realize that every day you get up to work, you're not actually working for yourself. You're working for someone else. Someone else's position, possessions, someone else's bank account. I mean, think of it this way. Imagine that you go to work this week, you work a full, tireless, long week, a hard and demanding week, and when it comes time then for you to receive your pay, your boss gives it to a complete stranger. Whether that stranger's wise or a fool, doesn't matter. It's just someone you don't know. And certainly someone who didn't work for it. And then imagine that happens week after week after week, month after month, year after year. How long would you stay in that job? How long would you love going to work? Would you not at some point say, I hate this, it makes me despair? And before you say, well, that would never happen, isn't that exactly what happens every day? When we're young and we have a little money or success, we dream about what the future will bring. Imagine if we made $30 an hour. Or 50 or 150. Could you imagine making $150? I mean, what would we do with that kind of money? And then there comes a day when we're making $150 an hour. But our mortgage has gone up. The number of people feeding off our check has increased. The government has dipped its fingers into our pocket even more deeply. Christian school tuition starts getting paid. And it never seems enough. Our check grows bigger and bigger, and our bills outpace what we can provide. It feels like we're working for everyone but ourselves. In fact, isn't that why we speak in our culture of midlife crises? In our community or context, it's almost exclusively a male problem. A man works and works and works. And he's put 20 years in, 25 years in. He lifts up his head and he sees what he's accomplished and the bills and the kids' need for new clothing and the wife's need for more grocery money. And they look at that wife that they married so many years before and they see that she's been replaced with some middle-aged woman, and that he himself is nowhere closer to his dream of being free. And what does he do in that situation? What does he say in that moment? He throws it all away because he asks, what's the point? He buys himself a new sports car, divorces himself from his wife, gets a young woman to ride in it with him, and he says, fine, if I can't succeed, I'm just going to purchase my happiness. Why do men do such foolish things? Seems to me because they come to the exact same conclusion our teacher does in this chapter and in this text. They say, I hate all my toil. And so I turned about and gave my heart up to despair, they say. Because in the end, I'm not serving myself. I'm serving everybody else. And the point is not to justify, legitimize, or even condone any of it. Not to say it's okay. But to recognize that if you get up for work on Tuesday morning thinking that you can climb the mountain of success and reach the mountaintop, you will only find at that top despair, not joy. Isn't this why we say, I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer, or no one says at the end of their life, I wish I'd spent more time at the office? Those are just echoes, aren't they, of what our text teaches. And that's a word that our community needs to hear. Our community, blessed with a Calvinistic work ethic, there's no question about that. That's not a problem. That's not the issue. We have inherited a work ethic that both recognizes that success comes from hard work and that hard work is the right way to live. But we can forget the why of that. We can forget the underlying premise, the fuel that gave rise to the Calvinistic work ethic, and it wasn't material success. So that when we approach business, success, toiling long and hard for our families and future as the great good of our lives, we will, like the teacher, despair and find the pointlessness of it brought keenly into our hearts. Because in the end, we all need more than sandcastles on the beach. We need more than successful businesses. We need more than nice vacations in the Dominican. We need more. Not only because work has temporary value, but because in the end, all you're really doing is working for someone else. The problem is you've got to give it all away. And when you give it away, there's every chance you'll give it to a fool. This is the second part of our text in the verses 20b through 23, where our teacher says, so I turned about and gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. This also is vanity and a great evil. What has a man from all the toil and striving of heart with which he toils beneath the sun? For all his days are full of sorrow, and his work is a vexation. Even in the night his heart does not rest. This is also vanity. Now the teacher focuses on the one to whom he gives all of his wealth in the end. He's collected all of this stuff. He has accumulated all of this success, and now he gives it to someone else. And what if that person is a fool? Now, someone who doesn't value what they've been given, and maybe because they didn't work for it, they didn't have to value it. Watching all your hard work dissipate into the breeze because your successor is a fool is, it would seem to me, a rather discouraging experience, surely. Now there is, of course, again, there is an anticipated joy in this, surely. We might wonder what's wrong with the teacher. Maybe he's just depressed and discouraged, because surely there is a joy in giving your stuff, your work, the fruit of your labors to especially the next generation. To have sons and daughters, grandsons and granddaughters all working together and being provided for, being able to support the work of the church, to pay for Christian education, to pay for their mortgages, to be able to provide a company that is able to provide that kind of blessing for future generations. Surely that's a blessing. That's a reason to rejoice. That's a thing to be glad for. And we may not expect it, we may not insist on it, we may not require that our children follow in our footsteps. But truth be told, there is a certain satisfaction that comes from knowing that our sons or daughters enjoy doing what we enjoy doing, and they want to do it with us, and in the businesses we've started, they want to follow in our footsteps. and that our work stays in the family, that we can talk about these things, that we can help them along, that we can take all of the years of experience we've been given and we can share that with them as they start out on the journey of life. They can stand on our shoulders and take things even farther. Surely there's nothing wrong with that. Indeed, isn't that a joy? Although, as joyful as that is, anyone who's gone through this, especially in our context, is aware of how hard it is to make that transition. We exist in a generation where the single greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the world will take place. And it's not easy to make that transition. I think both the first and the second generations in family businesses will admit that that transition isn't easy. The first generation wants to do things equitably. They want to count all of their children and all of their responsibilities in the transfer of this wealth. They want to make sure that their accomplishments aren't just frittered away by poor management. They continue to stick around in the business as long as they can, still pulling some of the levers. They think they know how best to manage this complex organization. The second generation wants to be able to take things over and show their worth, apply some of the more modern techniques to things and more up-to-date circumstances. They want to have the training wheels taken off so that they can run the business the way that their parents did when they were their age. Nobody was watching over their shoulder. Why are you watching over mine? And there's always that fear that by handing off our pride and joy, we're also contributing to its demise. Whether the three-generation life cycle of a family business is accurate or not, I think we all fear that it might be. The first generation wears coveralls, the second generation wears suits, the third generation goes back to coveralls. And that's the best case scenario. Because what happens if we give it to our son or our daughter and they fritter it away in foolish business decisions, in lifestyle choices that cost them way too much so that they cannot sacrifice or serve, who spend money in ways that are not wise, not working hard to maintain the company or to look forward to the future or to plan for the next generation that comes after them? What happens if some individual comes and buys up our business and then promptly drives it into the ground by their foolish decisions, such that our business's name is no longer respected, our accomplishments are no longer acknowledged, so that our business is no longer around? We have spent decades building something, a brand, valued and trusted by its employee or its employees and its customers, and now they can only think of how foolish it is. Wouldn't that rob you of some of the satisfaction? Wouldn't that rob you of some of the positive value that you had accomplished in your work over the decades of labor? It's one thing to imagine that someone else will benefit from our hard work. That's point one. It's much worse to realize that we're working hard so that a fool can use everything to destroy what he touches. Imagine a craftsman, and it matters not what kind, a jeweler, a builder, an artist, or any skilled artisan. And imagine that they finish a work providing an exquisite example of their skill. They've been doing this for decades, and they have created their greatest work. And they give this work, they give this great expression of their craft to a son or a daughter. And instead of cherishing it, that son takes this brilliant object and trades it for a half bottle of whiskey. Can you appreciate why any such craftsman might be discouraged, frustrated, or angry? Why he might hate his life and all that he's done? The focus here is the abiding value of what we've accomplished, of the work that we do when it's given to the hands now of a fool. Here the issue is not that we've died and had to transfer our wealth to someone else. It's that even if we're still alive, we are unable to enjoy our retirement and our glory years because we see that all that we've been building has been torn down in short order. And not because of anything we've done, but because it was a fool who followed us. Meaning that any enduring legacy any of us will ever have will be determined by people other than us. And so why go to work? Why try so hard? Why build the business? Why? In the end, the reality of our frailty and our transience, even our mortality, renders everything we do this coming week irrelevant. The foolishness of our heirs renders our work irrelevant. The truth is, we're not working for ourselves. We're not accomplishing much. It's all vanity, a chasing after the wind. We don't always realize it, but most days we're just building castles in the sand. So why do you get up for work on Tuesday? Why bother? What's the point? I think to some degree our world has come to understand this in an extremely competitive society and in a materialistic society where we have been told by everyone that having stuff is how you judge success in life. Our world has come to realize that it is a treadmill they can't get off and that they can't accomplish anything on, and so they have checked out. We see the despair, we see the anxiety, we see the depression, we see the homelessness, we see the dependence on others to provide in social programs. So many in our world just can't be bothered to go to work. We know that in terms of hiring, some of the businesses trying to get people to show up on time, trying to get them to work for more than a short period of time, for more than a week or two. But these people, they say to us, what's the point? Why should I bother? Life's too short, and I'm not going to waste my time making money for someone else. To some degree, our world has understood, even more keenly than we do, the truth of this passage and of the teacher's insight. What's the point, they say? But we need to ask ourselves that same question. We need a reason to get up in the morning, one that isn't so transient, one that isn't so temporary, one that cannot be transferred or thrown away. We need a material blessing, or we need a success as a result of work. We need something that we can accomplish that will last longer than the few short years we have on this life. We need treasures that neither moth nor rust can decay. We need treasures that can survive the grave, that can transfer from this life to the next, that we can take with us and hear the King say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." On a certain level, we begin to hear the answer, don't we? We begin to hear Jesus telling us the answer. He's been telling us the answer for a long time. But we need to hear it again and again and again. We have an inheritance that can neither spoil nor fade. We are the richest of all men by virtue of God's grace in Jesus Christ. So we don't have to get up Tuesday morning to chase anything. We don't have to get up Tuesday morning to try and prove our worth, to try and reach for the brass ring. We don't have to pad our nest or fill our bank account. We are the wealthiest of all men in Jesus Christ. For death has been defeated. We have been redeemed, and we have a future and a hope. And all we need to do is say thank you. Is take what the Lord has given, those 5 talents, those 3 talents, that 1 talent. We need to take whatever God has given to us, and we need to use it to advance His cause and His kingdom. We need to advance His plan and His purpose. And here's the thing, that doesn't change the what we do. We still got to go to the job site. We still got to go to the office. We still got to go to the school and the classroom. We still got to do exactly the same thing we're going to do Tuesday, but we don't do it for the same reason. We don't show up so that we can get a paycheck. We show up so that God can be praised. We show up so that His kingdom can be advanced. We show up so that we can use our talents and say at the end of the day, not look at what I've accomplished, but Lord, I have made this for you. May it please you. Our whole orientation has to transcend the sun. It has to get beyond the skies. We have to look not at the stuff of this life, but at the Son of God who sits at the right hand of our Father and who is drawing us unto Himself. In the end, all of this stuff is going to burn up when the Lord returns. But what is of eternal value, what is of praise to the King, what is a treasure in heaven, will survive. And when we work for that which is beyond the sun, that is, when we work for the Son on our job site, in our businesses, in our classrooms, in our homes, in our offices, when we say, I'm here because I've been blessed and I want to bless, because I have been gifted and I want to praise, because I have been redeemed and I'm no longer a participant in the rat race. I am here to worship the living God with my talents, with my gifts, with my integrity, with my diligence, my hard work, with my service, with my honesty and integrity. I wish to praise the King. Then we find blessings that transcend. We find joys that proceed beyond the grave, that we meet in eternity, and for which the Lord also encourages us by his grace. That's what the teacher of our text is getting us to see. He forces us to follow the money until we realize it leads to an empty pit. And then he calls us to lift our eyes heavenward, to see the bread and the wine, and to say, this is the greatest feast you're going to have this weekend. We had our family Thanksgiving last night. It was excellent. Nothing compared to this bit of bread and this bit of wine. For here are eternal blessings. Let's thank him for that in prayer. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, we thank you that you feed